This relates to language development and use of language. What happens when children struggle to read and write? And how can picture books be used practically to build vocabulary and things like that?
Okay, I'll take that question because I was many years ago when I started this program, the Buguri Library program. One of the questions, and like you were saying earlier, this was specifically for children of waste pickers. So one of the questions was, why start a library for children who don't read? 70% of the children could not read. So that was the biggest challenge, that most children who walked in couldn't read, or even if they read at levels way below that, that their age. So picture books were magic. I think the first step that we took with especially dealing with very difficult communities was the attempt for children to fall in love with stories. Many of children were listening to stories for the first time. We are not talking about, backgrounds in which there's a grandmother, there is a father, there is a mother who will tell stories to children every day. That is not happening in their households. So many children were listening to stories for the first time, and for us, read aloud was how we were doing it. We were showing children pictures, books that they had not seen before, and then telling the stories, even to like 10, 12-year-olds. I mean, we didn't approach it from a literacy point of view. It was from a point of engagement directly. This is a story. Just the fact that you cannot read does not mean that you cannot engage with these concepts, these stories that are there. And I think that was very powerful to do at that point, though it was an attempt to engage with the children, because as children listened to stories, they wanted to listen to more stories. They wanted to sometimes listen to the same stories 10 times. And as they listened to stories, I don't know how, and frankly, none of us really know, they picked reading. And that is the power of read alouds. And if you look at read aloud as a pedagogical method, though we didn't enter from that thought, it became like a byproduct of that engagement. Slowly children started to pick up those letters, pick up and read. They wanted to engage. One thing that we encouraged was, even if you can't read the text, read the visual, make a story of your own. And many times they made stories that were way better than the authors, and then they in some way, this was no longer a toy, because the first time we engaged with, they were seeing books. The books were flying across the library. Book was like this weapon you would hit your friend with. You see that, no? But once they realized that this is my favorite book, this has the story, and that relationship and the bond with the books changed. And I think that was a critical moment. And then the fact that they can absolutely build their own stories, even if they don't do it. Many children started to mock read, which is a great thing, when they know the story, but they are trying to mock read. It's an aspiration to read. And all of these, I think, are great, like first steps to start developing the habit of reading and literacy. And nobody was shamed for being a 12-year-old and not being able to read, including the teachers. And I think that's very, very, very important. That this is a process all of us are here together with.